soft ambient city sounds. Cars pass in the distance, the low hum of traffic blends with the faint sound of rain tapping against glass. In the heart of Lagos, where the city never truly sleeps, Amma sat by her apartment window, watching the world move without her. Neon lights blinked from distant billboards. The sound of laughter drifted up from the street below, strangers finding joy in another restless night. Amma was 28, ambitious, educated. On paper, she had everything she once prayed for. A stable job at a bank, a small but modern apartment, and independence. Yet, inside she felt like a shadow of herself. Every morning felt like déjà vu. Wake up, dress neatly, smile at people she didn't really know, and spend 8 long hours behind a computer screen, pretending to care about numbers that never truly meant anything. Her colleagues called her the quiet one. She didn't mind. Silence was safer than pretending to be happy. At home, the quiet was louder. Since her mother's passing 3 years ago, the walls of her apartment felt like they were closing in on her. Sometimes she'd still reach for her phone, ready to call her mother, only to remember that there was no one left to pick up. And then there was the heartbreak. A man she thought she'd build a future with, gone without warning, leaving only an apology that came too late. That was when Amma stopped believing that life rewarded kindness. She stopped trying to plan ahead. She just existed. Still, every night before bed, Amma would take out her journal, a small, brown notebook with worn edges, and write. Not poetry, not dreams, just thoughts, messy, unfiltered, often ending with the same question she could never answer. What would my future self think of the choices I'm making today? That question haunted her. Sometimes it gave her peace. Other times it made her wonder if her future self would be proud or disappointed. Sound cue. Light thunder rolls outside. The rain began to fall harder. The lights flickered once, twice, and then the apartment fell into complete darkness. Not again, Amma whispered, fumbling for her phone to use as a flashlight. The power outage didn't surprise her. It was Lagos, after all. But something about the darkness felt heavier that night. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was loneliness. Or maybe, deep down, she knew something in her life was about to change. With nothing else to do, Amma sighed and decided to clean. She grabbed a small torchlight and moved to the corner of her living room, where old boxes from her mother's house sat untouched. Dust danced in the beam of the light as she opened one box after another. Old photographs, faded letters, a cracked picture frame of her mother smiling. Her arms wrapped around a younger Amma. For the first time in years, Amma smiled. A weak, bittersweet smile. How long has it been? She whispered to the empty room. 10 years? Maybe more. Each item told a story, a reminder of the girl she used to be. But then, her hand brushed against something different. A small, sealed envelope, yellowed by time, buried under books and papers. She frowned. There was her name on it, Amma Adedayo, her handwriting. But something made her heart stop. The date written neatly on the back corner. October 24th, 2035. 10 years from now. She blinked. Read it again. No, that's impossible, she whispered. Her fingers trembled as she turned the envelope over, tracing the ink that hadn't faded. It felt real, not like a dream or a prank. Her heart pounded in her chest, faster and louder with each passing second. Outside, lightning flashed, casting a white glow across her face. The world was silent, as if holding its breath. Amma stared at the letter, frozen between disbelief and fear. And for the first time in a long while, she felt something. A strange pull, deep and unexplainable. It wasn't joy. It wasn't pain. It was curiosity, mixed with a faint whisper in her mind. Open it. But Amma couldn't. Not yet. She sat there, clutching the letter in the dark, as the rain continued to fall, steady and relentless. Somewhere inside her, she knew that whatever was inside that envelope could change everything. But for now, she was too afraid to find out. Fade out. The sound of rain continues, soft and haunting. Soft ambient sounds, distant thunder fades into silence. The steady ticking of a wall clock fills the room. The storm had passed, but the air still felt heavy. Amma sat on the floor, the small envelope resting in her palm. She hadn't moved for minutes. The power was still out, and her torchlight flickered weakly, casting her shadow across the walls. Her mind raced. Who could have written this? The handwriting was hers, every curve, every slant of the letters. But the date, October 24th, 2035, she whispered to herself. That's 10 years ahead. Her voice broke the silence. And yet, it didn't make anything clearer. Finally, after a deep breath, Amma tore open the seal. The paper inside was smooth, neatly folded, untouched by time. She unfolded it carefully, her heart thudding so loud she could almost hear it echo. Her eyes scanned the first few lines. Dear Amma, if you are reading this, it means you're still searching for answers you never stopped asking. You think life has forgotten you, but it hasn't. The next few months will test everything you believe about yourself. You'll soon lose something you think defines you. But that's where you'll find your real strength. Amma froze. Her chest tightened. The words felt familiar, like something she might have written on one of her dark nights. But these weren't her words. They were older, wiser, written with a tone of calm she didn't yet possess. Her eyes darted down the page. Don't ignore the signs. Don't run from what feels uncomfortable. And when the time comes, you must go back to the place you swore never to return. Her stomach dropped. The place she swore never to return. Her hometown. The small village she'd left behind after her mother's death. The place filled with memories she had buried deep. She swallowed hard. The letter even mentioned details about her current life. Her desk at work. Her favorite mug. The sleepless nights she'd been having. Things no one could possibly know. Her breathing grew shallow. It couldn't be real. Maybe someone was playing a cruel joke. But who? No one knew these things. No one. She stood, pacing the room, her mind spinning between fear and disbelief. Maybe I wrote it and forgot, she muttered, trying to convince herself. But 10 years in the future? How? Why? She looked at the handwriting again, identical to hers, but slightly uneven, like the hand of someone older, or tired. Sound cue. A faint gust of wind brushes against the window. Amma's torchlight dimmed again, the shadows deepening. She sat down slowly, holding the letter to her chest as if it could explain itself. Part of her wanted to throw it away, pretend she never saw it. But another part, the quiet, restless part that had always questioned life, wanted to know more. As the night deepened, Amma found herself reading the same line over and over again. You must go back to the place you swore never to return. The words echoed in her mind like a haunting melody. She didn't understand what they meant. Not yet, but deep inside, something told her. This letter wasn't the end of something. It was only the beginning. Soft morning ambience, distant traffic, faint bird song. The city has awakened, but Amma hasn't slept. Amma sat at her dining table staring at the letter once more. The paper was now wrinkled from her trembling hands. The words still burned into her memory. She had read it at least a dozen times, hoping the meaning would change, that it would somehow stop sounding like a warning. The sun had risen, painting her apartment walls with dull golden light, but Amma felt no warmth. Her coffee sat untouched. Every few seconds, her eyes drifted back to the sentence that refused to let her go. You'll soon lose something you think defines you, but that's where you'll find your real strength. She wanted to laugh at it, to dismiss it as nonsense. Someone must be playing a trick, she whispered to herself. Maybe an old friend, maybe. But even as she said the words, her voice trailed off. No one knew her handwriting that perfectly. No one could have written such personal details. So she folded the letter, slid it into her journal, and told herself to forget it. At work that day, she tried to act normal. The office was loud as usual. The hum of computers, the ring of phones, the endless chatter of co-workers pretending to love their jobs. Amma smiled, nodded, typed emails, but her mind wasn't there. Her colleague, Chica, leaned over and whispered, "You okay? You've been staring at that screen for 20 minutes. Amma forced a smile. "Just tired." Chica shrugged. "We all are," and went back to her desk. Later that afternoon, an unexpected message popped up in the office chat. "I'm quitting today." It was from Kemi, the coworker who always sat beside Amma. Everyone gasped, murmuring about it, but Amma froze. The letter, it had mentioned someone close to her at work suddenly leaving. Her fingers went cold. It could just be coincidence, right? She tried to shake the thought off. But then, on her way home, the sky darkened. A sudden storm rolled in, fierce, loud, almost violent. Exactly like the one described in the letter. Amma's umbrella flipped inside out. She ran through the rain, drenched and breathless, feeling like the world was closing in. That night, she sat on her bed, hair dripping, staring at her journal. She opened it again, reading the letter under the dim light. "Maybe I'm overthinking," she said to herself. "Maybe it's just bad timing." But deep down, she knew something was off. It was too specific, too precise. The words kept replaying in her mind. "You must go back to the place you swore never to return." She hadn't been back to her hometown since her mother died. The last time she was there, she'd sworn she'd never set foot in that house again. Not after the argument, not after the guilt that followed. The thought of returning made her chest tighten. She lay down, closing her eyes, hoping for sleep. But sleep didn't come. Instead, her mind filled with flashes of her childhood. Her mother's voice calling her name, laughter by the riverside, the small red gate of their family home. She woke up before dawn, restless. The city outside was quiet. Only the distant sound of rain dripping from rooftops. Amma sat up, gripping her pillow, and whispered to herself, "I have to know. I can't keep running from this." For the first time, the idea of going back didn't just scare her. It pulled at her. Maybe the letter wasn't a warning. Maybe it was a message, meant to guide her somewhere. By sunrise, Amma had made up her mind. She packed a small bag, clothes, her journal, and the letter. Before leaving, she looked around her apartment one last time. Everything was neat, quiet, predictable. And yet, as she locked the door behind her, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was leaving more than just a home. She was leaving behind the version of herself that was afraid to find the truth. Sound cue. The low hum of a bus engine starting. The city fades into the distance. Amma was going home. Sound design, distant thunder. The rumble of a bus along an old country road. Wind whistling through trees. The journey felt longer than Amma remembered. The city faded behind her, replaced by rolling fields and narrow dirt paths that wound through sleepy villages. The closer she got to her hometown, the heavier her chest felt. Like each passing mile peeled away the layers of strength she had built over the years. Through the window, she could see flashes of her childhood. The old market stalls, the same mango tree by the bus stop, even the faded mural near the primary school. Everything looked smaller now, as if time had quietly stolen its confidence. When the bus finally stopped, Amma hesitated before stepping out. The air smelled of wet earth and wood smoke, the scent of her past. Children ran along the road, chasing each other. their laughter echoing faintly. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crowed. She slung her bag over her shoulder and started walking toward her mother's old house. Her shoes crunched against gravel. With every step, she felt herself shrinking back into the little girl who had once stood barefoot on this same path, dreaming of escape. When she reached the house, her heart stopped for a moment. The red gate was still there, rusted now, slightly bent, but unmistakably the same. The house behind it stood silent, swallowed by vines and dust. It looked forgotten, like a memory that had stopped breathing. Amma pushed the gate open, and the creak echoed through the quiet yard. She walked slowly, almost reverently. The porch was covered in dry leaves. The wooden door bore the same cracks she used to trace with her fingers as a child. Inside, everything smelled faintly of time, that thick old scent of wood, dust, and rain. The air was still. Her footsteps stirred little clouds of memory. There was the couch her mother used to nap on, the faded curtains her aunt had sewn, the old calendar on the wall. Frozen on a date 10 years ago, it was as if the house had been waiting for her. Amma ran her fingers over the mantel, where family pictures once stood. Most of them were gone, but one frame remained. Cracked glass, faded photo. It was her and her mother. Her mother's smile was wide, proud, unguarded. Amma's throat tightened. She couldn't remember the last time she had looked at this face without pain. Then she noticed something odd. On the small wooden table near the window lay another envelope, identical to the one she'd found in her apartment. Her pulse quickened. She reached for it with trembling hands. The handwriting, again, unmistakably her own. This one was dated 1 day later than the first. She hesitated before opening it. The wind outside howling through broken shutters like a warning. Finally, she tore it open. "You've come back. Good. But this house hides what you never wanted to face. Don't be afraid to listen. The walls remember everything." Amma's hands went cold. Her eyes darted around the room, half expecting movement. For a moment, she thought she heard a soft creak upstairs. Slow, rhythmic, like someone pacing. Her heart thudded in her chest. She whispered, "Who's there?" Silence, but the air suddenly felt heavier, charged. The smell of rain seeped through the broken roof. And faintly, so faintly she almost doubted it, she heard her mother's humming, that same lullaby from her childhood, the one her mother used to sing whenever she was afraid. Tears welled in Amma's eyes. "No," she whispered. "This can't be real." But the sound persisted, soft, steady, comforting. She walked toward the stairs, every creak beneath her feet echoing like a heartbeat. Each step felt like a confrontation, not with a ghost, but with her own guilt. At the top of the stairs, she stopped in front of her old bedroom door. The knob was cool, metallic, and familiar. She hesitated, then turned it. Inside, everything was just as she'd left it. The pale blue walls, the broken lamp, the half-torn posters. Dust floated in the beam of sunlight that cut through the cracked window. On her desk, she saw her old school journal. She opened it. The last entry was unfinished, dated the day before her mother died. It read, "I'll tell Mama the truth tomorrow. I have to. I can't keep lying." The sentence ended abruptly. Amma froze. Her breath caught. She remembered now. The secret she had buried. The one that had driven her away. The one her mother never lived to hear. Her knees gave out. She sank to the floor, clutching the journal. Tears streamed down her face, hot and unrelenting. Through her sobs, she whispered, "Mama, I'm sorry." And then, for the briefest second, she felt it. A hand, gentle and warm, resting on her shoulder. She turned quickly, but there was no one there. Only the faint scent of her mother's perfume, lingering in the air. Amma looked around, trembling, and noticed the letter on the floor again. A single line at the bottom had appeared faintly. as if it had been hidden before. You cannot move forward until you forgive yourself. Soft instrumental music builds, hopeful yet haunting. Amma clutched the letter to her chest, crying quietly as the wind howled through the open windows. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt alive, listening, waiting, and for the first time, Amma felt she was exactly where she needed to be. Fade out. Sound of rain easing into silence. Sound design, the soft patter of rain outside. Occasional thunder in the distance. A low, emotional piano, underscoring the silence inside the house. Amma sat on the bedroom floor long after the tears had dried on her cheeks. The letter lay beside her, its final line echoing in her mind. You cannot move forward until you forgive yourself. But forgive herself for what? The memory tugged at the corners of her mind like a shadow she couldn't yet name. She picked up her old journal again, flipping through pages filled with teenage handwriting. Notes about dreams, school, secret crushes. Then came the pages she had ripped out years ago. The ones she had sworn no one would ever read. Her fingers brushed the torn edges. Something inside her stirred. The air in the room shifted. A faint, familiar hum filled the silence again. Her mother's lullaby, low and distant, as if coming from behind the walls. Amma stood slowly. The sound seemed to lead her toward the corner of the room, near the old wardrobe. She touched the wooden paneling and noticed one plank slightly loose. Her heart began to race. She pulled it back, revealing a small hollow space between the boards. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a small tin box, the same box her mother used to keep her jewelry in. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were three things: folded letter, a faded photograph of Amma and her mother at the riverside, and a hospital receipt, dated the day before her mother's death. Amma unfolded the letter with trembling hands. The handwriting wasn't hers this time. It was her mother's. Amma, my beautiful girl. If you ever find this, it means I'm gone. Please know I always knew more than I said. I know you've been carrying a secret. I want you to forgive yourself, no matter what it is. Mistakes do not define you. Love does. I forgive you, and I'll always be with you. Amma's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes filled again. Mama, you knew? She clutched the letter to her chest, her body trembling. The guilt she'd carried for years, the one she could never speak aloud, now came flooding back. Flashback soundscape, bustling city noise fading into the soft, echoing hum of memory. 10 years ago, Amma had been 17, smart, restless, desperate to escape the small-town life. She'd applied to a university far from home without telling her mother, knowing her mother couldn't afford it. When the acceptance letter came, Amma lied. She told her mother she'd won a scholarship, but she hadn't. She had secretly borrowed money from her mother's savings, money meant for her mother's medical treatment. Days later, her mother had fallen ill again. Amma remembered rushing to the clinic, crying, begging the doctor to save her. But it was too late. Her mother had died that same week, and Amma had never told anyone the truth. She had blamed herself, believed her selfishness had killed the only person who ever loved her unconditionally. Back in the present, Amma sank to her knees. The room seemed to breathe around her, whispering memories through every creak and sigh of the old wood. The second letter, the one she'd found on her apartment table, now made sense. She had written it to herself, but not in the literal, physical sense. It was a manifestation, her subconscious calling out to her, her buried guilt demanding to be faced after 10 long years, a bridge between the woman she had become and the girl who had never forgiven herself. The handwriting, the timing, the haunting familiarity, it was all part of her own unraveling. a way for her soul to finally speak. She looked around the room again, the photo on the floor, the two letters, the broken journal, and then she saw something she hadn't noticed before. On the back of the photograph, written faintly in her mother's handwriting, were 4 words: "Go to the river." Amma's eyes widened. The river. The same one where they'd taken the photo. The same one where she and her mother used to sit every Sunday, talking about dreams and life. Without hesitation, she grabbed her coat and headed out into the rain. Sound design, wind rushing, footsteps on wet grass, the soft roar of the river ahead. When she reached the riverside, the storm had calmed into a drizzle. The water shimmered beneath the gray sky. Amma stood at the edge, staring at her reflection. Older now, but with the same searching eyes. She took a deep breath and spoke softly. "I've been running from you, Mama, and from myself." Her voice broke. "I'm sorry. For the lie. For the money. For everything I did that day." The wind swirled gently, and for a moment she thought she saw movement. A faint shimmer in the water, like sunlight breaking through the clouds. And then she heard it. The lullaby again. But this time, it wasn't haunting. It was peaceful. It was a goodbye. Amma closed her eyes and let the tears fall freely. She whispered, "I forgive me too." The river flowed quietly, carrying her words away like a promise. When she opened her eyes again, the clouds had parted. The world felt lighter. For the first time in years, she could breathe without pain. She pulled out the 2 letters and the photo from her bag, placed them in a small tin box, and set it gently into the river. As it drifted away, she smiled. A quiet, trembling smile of release. Music rises, soft, emotional, full of release and rebirth. Amma turned away from the water and began walking back toward the road. Her steps were slow but steady. The past was no longer chasing her. It was walking beside her, finally at peace. And somewhere deep inside her heart, she knew. The woman who had written that letter 10 years in the future was the one she was becoming now. A woman who had learned to forgive. A woman who had found herself again. Opening soundscape. The soft hum of morning in the village. Birds. Distant laughter of children. The sound of sweeping outside. The world feels calm again after the storm. The sun rose gently over the village, bathing everything in gold. Amma sat on the porch of her mother's old house, a cup of tea in her hand, watching the world awaken. For the first time in years, her heart was quiet. The air smelled of wet earth and peace. She thought of the river, of the tin box drifting away, and of how much lighter she'd felt after letting it go. But even in that peace, something stirred. A whisper of unfinished purpose. A soft reminder that her story wasn't done. Later that morning, Amma walked toward the community center where a group of children were painting wooden signs. She spotted Tunde, the local teacher, giving instructions with calm patience. He turned when he saw her, his face lighting up with a smile that carried warmth and steadiness. The kind of peace she'd been missing all her life. "Amma, you came back," he said. She smiled faintly. "I told you I wasn't going to hide anymore." They walked together, talking about the new library project. Tunde told her about the funding troubles, that the small school was on the verge of closing due to corruption and lack of support. As he spoke, Amma felt a tightening in her chest. The children laughed and painted around them, but behind their joy was uncertainty. Without the school, the entire community would lose its heart. She wanted to help. But how? Then, as if fate wanted to test her resolve, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her old boss in Lagos. "Congratulations, Amma. The board approved your promotion. We need you back next week." She froze, her breath caught between pride and dread. A part of her had waited years for this. The recognition, the title, the success. But another part whispered something else. A quiet voice that sounded like her mother's. You'll soon lose something you think defines you. But that's where you'll find your real strength. That line. The same one from the letter. That night, Amma couldn't sleep. The air was still, heavy with thought. She sat by the window, staring out at the moonlit fields. On the table before her lay the burned edges of the letter she had nearly destroyed. The one she'd promised herself she wouldn't let rule her anymore. But its words had become more than ink. They were a mirror. Her life in Lagos, the endless deadlines, the hollow promotions, the loneliness, had defined her for too long. But here, in this quiet village, surrounded by children who saw hope in her eyes, she had found something real, purpose. She whispered to herself, maybe losing that life is how I finally find mine. Next morning. Sound design. Soft morning breeze. Faint chatter from the school. Amma walked into the schoolyard just as Tunde was speaking with a group of parents. His face was clouded with worry. They're shutting it down, Amma, he said quietly when he saw her. The last funds have been pulled. We have 2 weeks. She looked around, at the cracked walls, the books piled in corners, the children reading beneath the trees. She knew what she had to do. Music rises softly, a tone of resolve and sacrifice. Over the next few days, Amma poured herself into helping the school. She organized fundraisers, wrote proposals, and contacted every person she knew who might lend support. Her corporate experience, once a symbol of emptiness, became a tool for change. She worked day and night, alongside Tunda, laughing, planning, dreaming. In the process, she realized that sometimes destiny doesn't arrive through miracles, but through choices. And one evening, as they rested beneath the mango tree outside the school, Tunda handed her a small brown envelope. No name on it, he said. Someone left it for you this morning. Amma frowned. She hadn't told anyone she was back. She opened the envelope carefully and froze. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper, written in her handwriting, but older, wiser. The top corner was dated 10 years ahead. Her heart pounded. She whispered, "No, not again." But as she began to read, her hands trembled. Not in fear this time, but in wonder. Amma, if you're reading this, it means you made the choice to stay. You gave up what you thought defined you and found what truly matters. You saved the school. You healed the past. You became everything you once dreamed of being. This is your letter of peace. No more warnings. No more guilt. Just gratitude. You finally listened. You finally lived. Tears welled in her eyes. Her breath came out shaky, but full of relief. She whispered, "So it was never about fate. It was always about becoming who I was meant to be." Tunde noticed the tears and smiled gently. "Good news?" he asked. Amma looked up at him through her tears and smiled. "The best kind. Montage. Soft piano and natural sound blending together." Days turned into weeks. Donations came in from across the region. The school survived. Amma chose to stay. Not as someone who had failed to rise, but as someone who had learned to stand. She began journaling again, her handwriting flowing easily now. Not to predict the future, but to honor the present. One evening, she placed the new letter, the one from her future self, beside her mother's old one. Side by side, they looked almost like a conversation between generations. She whispered softly, "Sometimes the future isn't what we're told. It's what we choose to believe." Camera pans out. Soft wind through the trees. children laughing in the distance. The golden light of sunset fills the screen. Amma sits in silence, a calm smile on her face. Her reflection in the window is peaceful. A woman, finally free. Opening soundscape, soft morning breeze, birds singing faintly, the sound of children reading aloud in the background. The world feels alive again. Months had passed since Amma made her choice. The school was thriving. Laughter and chatter filled the once empty hallways. The walls, once cracked and faded, were freshly painted, covered with colorful drawings made by the children themselves. Amma stood at the doorway, watching Tundi explain a math problem to a small group. There was something deeply comforting about the scene, something she had been searching for her whole life. For years, she had chased success, thinking it would make her whole. But standing there, she realized peace had never been somewhere out there. It had always been waiting inside her, beneath the noise and guilt. That evening, Amma returned home, the sky glowing orange and soft. She sat at her desk, the same one where her mother once wrote letters, and opened her journal. The pages were now full again, not with complaints or regrets, but reflections, gratitude, growth. She wrote slowly, deliberately. I used to think life was something that happened to me, but now I know it's something I get to shape, moment by moment. Her pen paused as she smiled. And I'm finally shaping it my way. Sound, gentle knock at the door. Amma looked up. The mailman stood outside, holding a small parcel. For you, he said. No sender's name. She thanked him and closed the door, her curiosity rising. The handwriting on the envelope made her heart skip a beat. Familiar, looping, precise. Her own. It was dated 10 years ahead. She hesitated for a moment, then slowly unsealed it. Inside was a neatly folded letter. The paper smelled faintly of lavender, the same scent her mother used to love. Amma unfolded it, her eyes tracing the first line, and her breath caught in her throat. You finally listened. You finally lived. Her eyes filled instantly. This letter is not a warning. It's a thank you for choosing courage over comfort, for believing in love again, for staying when running felt easier, for forgiving yourself. Amma's hand trembled slightly as she read on. If you ever doubt again, look around, not forward. The answers you're chasing are already in your hands. At the bottom, a simple line stood out. Calm, certain. The future isn't a destination. It's a reflection of the choices we make when we finally trust our hearts. Amma folded the letter gently and placed it beside her mother's old one on the desk. 2 envelopes, one from the past, one from the future, sitting together like mirrors of time. She whispered softly, "Thank you, both of you." Outside, the wind picked up, lifting the curtains slightly, carrying the scent of rain and fresh earth through the window. It felt as though her mother's spirit and her future self were both there, listening. Music builds, soft piano and strings. A short montage followed. Amma standing before a group of children, teaching them how to write letters to their future selves. Her laughter mingling with theirs as paper planes soared across the courtyard. A quiet evening by the riverbank, the same spot where she'd once wept, now a place of peace, not pain. Tunda reading beside her, their hands brushing. No promises, no rush, just quiet understanding. Amma's voiceover drifted softly over the images. We spend so much of our lives fearing what's ahead, when sometimes the future is just waiting for us to forgive the past. Later that night, she sat once more by her window. The moonlight reflected off the two letters on her desk, one old, one new, both glowing softly. Amma smiled, whispering to herself, "Maybe the letters were never meant to predict my life. Maybe they were just guiding me back to myself." She leaned back, eyes glistening with peace. The camera lingered on her face, calm, fulfilled, radiant. Soft fade out, her voice the last thing we hear. Sometimes the future isn't what we're told. It's what we choose to believe. Opening soundscape. Soft afternoon wind. The laughter of children. Pages turning. A calm melody playing in the background. 10 years later, the world had changed, and so had Amma. The camera opened on a bright classroom filled with color and light. Young women sat in a circle, notebooks open, pens ready. Their faces glowed with curiosity and courage, faces full of stories waiting to be written. At the front of the room stood Amma, now in her late 30s. Her hair carried threads of wisdom, her smile gentle and knowing. The lines on her face were not from weariness, but from years of laughter, healing, and growth. "All right," she said warmly. "Today's exercise is simple. Write a letter to yourself, the version of you who's forgotten how strong she is." The women smiled, some shy, some teary. Amma moved among them, guiding their hands, helping them find words they didn't know they had. Cut to later that day. The classroom was quiet now. The students had gone. Amma sat at her desk, surrounded by stacks of handwritten letters. Each one carried the voice of a woman learning to love herself again. She picked up one letter, read a few lines, and smiled softly. Then her eyes drifted to the corner of the desk, where two old envelopes still rested, neatly preserved in a small wooden frame. One from her mother, one from her future self. They had yellowed slightly with age, but their words were still alive, whispering comfort to anyone who paused long enough to listen. Amma opened a drawer and pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. She began to write, her pen gliding easily, her heart at peace. At the top, she wrote, "To my younger self, open when you forget who you are." She paused, smiling to herself. Then she wrote, "Dear Amma, if you're reading this, it means you've lost your way again. That's all right. You've been here before. In the noise, in the fear, in the silence after a heartbreak. But remember, you always find your way back. You always rise. The strength you're looking for isn't ahead of you. It's within you. Always has been. Always will be." She signed it quietly. "With love, from your future self." Folding the letter carefully, she placed it inside a cream-colored envelope and sealed it. Then she wrote the words on the front. "Open when you forget who you are." She placed it gently on her desk, beside the others. Soft wind drifts through the open window. The curtain moves. The edge of the new envelope flutters slightly. Amma stood and walked toward the window, watching the children play outside in the golden light. A faint smile touched her lips, one of peace, not longing. The camera slowly panned toward the desk. The sunlight fell across the letters, illuminating the last one. As the wind lifted its edge slightly, a faint handwritten line appeared beneath the fold. "The future is always closer than we think." Music swells, gentle piano and strings, as the screen fades to black.